Okay, let's dive in. Picture this, Omnicorp Technologies. On the surface, it's a super efficient, well-oiled machine. But if you look just a little closer, you start to see this fascinating paradox. And it's one that uncovers a really bizarre flaw in how we all think about problems.
So here's the big question, right? Why is it that the smartest people you know can take something simple and turn it into a complete mess? And at the same time, you've got other folks who look at something incredibly complex and treat it with this, well, dangerous simplicity that just blows everything up. It's a puzzle. And we're going to get to the bottom of it by looking at two very, very different people.
So to really get this, we need to meet our two main players. They are, and I mean this, on completely opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to thinking. All right, in one corner, we've got Elias Thorne. This guy's the senior systems architect. Think of his brain as an absolute supercomputer. We're talking dual doctorates, processing 1,000 different variables every single second. And in the other corner, Brody Jenkins. He's a project manager. His credentials, a communications degree, and, let's just say, a level of confidence that is, well, completely unearned.
So, their boss, the COO, Sarah Lynn, she sees this dynamic, and she decides to run a little experiment. She's going to give each of them a task that is the absolute polar opposite of how their brains work, just to see what happens.
And get this, here's the setup. Elias, our genius, gets a task so simple it's almost insulting. Set up a holiday auto-reply email. That's it. Meanwhile, Brody, our overconfident manager, he gets a project of mammoth proportions. Migrate the company's entire server farm, 3 decades of data, to the cloud. Talk about a mismatch, right? The stage is officially set.
Okay, let's get inside their heads and see what's actually happening, because we're about to watch two very different ways of thinking. Two cognitive biases steer these guys straight towards two totally different, but oh boy, equally spectacular failures.
So first up, Elias. He's dealing with something called the curse of knowledge, and it's exactly what it sounds like. He knows so much, so deeply about how every little thing works that his brain has basically lost the ability to see a simple problem for what it is. He literally cannot know all the complexity he's aware of. And you can see this curse in action, right? This simple auto-reply email, for Elias, it turns into a mission to build a full-blown neural network. His brain just starts spinning. But what if the client is angry? We need sentiment analysis. What if they're in another country? We need IP-based translation. What if it's a legal threat? It has to automatically ping the legal department. It just spirals. What's driving all this? We can call it variable paralysis. See, his brilliant mind sees every single possible thing that could go wrong. Every tiny edge case, every hypothetical scenario, and he feels this overwhelming need to build a system that accounts for 100% of them, even the ones that are totally absurd. So while Elias is off building Skynet, what's Brody up to? Well, he's a textbook case of the Dunning-Kruger effect. You've probably heard of this one. It's the bias where people with really low skill in something just massively overestimate how good they are. They are, quite literally, too incompetent to even realize they're incompetent. And I'm not kidding, this was his actual plan. A multi-million-dollar data migration, and his entire strategy fits on one PowerPoint slide. It's just old servers with an arrow pointing to the cloud. That's it. Because in his head, the only concept he has for this is uploading files. He shrinks this enormous, complex project down to fit inside that tiny little mental box. So naturally, his team of expert engineers tried to warn him. They're talking about legacy code, data corruption, all the real-world problems. And what does Brody say? You IT guys always get bogged down in the weeds. You're missing the big picture. Let's be solution-oriented. See? He just dismisses all their expertise as them getting stuck on little details. In his mind, the complexity they're trying to warn him about, it just doesn't exist. And that brings us to Friday afternoon, the moment of truth. Both projects are going live. Elias's insanely over-engineered AI is officially active, and Brody has just clicked sync on his quote-unquote simple upload. This is it, the day of reckoning. And boom, the whole thing just implodes. Instantly. At 4 p.m., a major client sends a perfectly nice holiday email. Elias's AI immediately flags it for potential sarcasm, cross-references local weather patterns for some reason, completely panics, and sends a reply in Old Norse. Yeah, tiny translation bug. The client, as you can imagine, is absolutely terrified. But hey, that was just the appetizer. A few minutes later, this message flashes across every single screen at Omnicorp. Brody's simple upload, it failed, exactly like everyone knew it would.
And when it failed, it scrambled 3 decades of company data. Financial records, client databases, all of it turned into digital confetti. The entire company just stopped. So, after the smoke clears, the COO, Sarah Lynn, sits both of them down. It's time for what you might call a psychological autopsy. It's time to figure out the fundamental rules that both of them completely broke.
And Sarah really nails it. She frames their mistakes perfectly. For Elias, his flaw is like Rube Goldberg's razor. He built this incredibly complicated machine with 50 moving parts, all just to flip a simple light switch. Brody's flaw? The exact opposite. He violated the principle of Chesterton's fence. He tore down a fence without ever stopping to ask why it was there in the first place.
See, Elias completely ignored Occam's razor, that timeless idea that the simplest solution is almost always the best one. He forgot that real genius isn't about making simple things complicated. It's about making complicated things simple.
And Brody, he blew right past Chesterton's fence. The idea is so simple but so powerful. If you come across a fence in the middle of a field, you don't just tear it down. You first have to understand why someone built it. Those old legacy servers, that was the fence. And Brody tore it down without ever bothering to figure out why it was so important.
Okay, so what's the big lesson here for us? Well, it's all about figuring out which of these two traps we tend to fall into. It really comes down to the kind of lens we use to look at the world.
For a super smart guy like Elias, his mind is like a microscope. He zooms in so close on a problem that a simple, smooth stone looks like a terrifying landscape of jagged craters. But for someone like Brody, his lens is just smeared with Vaseline. Everything looks smooth, simple, and easy. The key thing to remember, both of those views are a complete distortion of reality.
And that really brings us to the self-check, right? Which one are you? Be honest. Are you an Elias? Do you get paralyzed by all the variables and over-engineer the simple stuff? Or are you a Brody? Do you dismiss complexity and just tear down fences you don't understand? Look, real wisdom, it's found somewhere in the middle. It's about respecting the complexity of a problem, but having the discipline to find a simple, elegant solution. So the next time you're facing a problem, any problem, I want you to ask yourself this one question. Is the right answer here to build a fence, or is it to build a neural network? The answer, I promise, will tell you a lot more about the problem and about yourself than you might think.
Please like and subscribe.